Welcome to the Annie Jennings PR Real Stories of Success podcast series. Annie Jennings is the creator of the most powerful radio campaign in the country, where you are booked on high-impact shows in top markets, and she is famous for guaranteed deliverables. My name is Stacey Emerald Kaufman. I'm the radio director for Annie Jennings PR, as well as interviewer for Jennings Wire Online magazine, a special community of bloggers and podcasters that is capturing the heart of America. And today we are sharing another real story of success to give listeners an inside look into what it's like to work with Annie Jennings PR. Joining me is James Holzritcher, author of A Just Cause, a true story of courage, hope, and the integrity of the American dream, who was able to leverage his radio interviews, which included appearances on NPR, CBS, ABC radio shows across the country, into new opportunities. So welcome, Jim.
Hi, how are you today, Stacey?
I am doing great. So first off, what was attractive to you about Annie Jennings PR when our research team had contacted you?
Well, what I found interesting is, Stacey, is that when I spoke with Annie after we contacted each other through LinkedIn, is when she had reached out to me from that media to make contact with her. She explained that she was a media planner and she could do public relations for me on the radio. And then we had our initial conference together, and I found it rather impressive that she was not only just interested in promoting what I was looking to promote, but she was also very concerned that the quality of guests that she was booking was up to her standards. And to me, that showed that she was concerned as well for not just the client, but also her reputation as well, because from what I understood, what she told me is that if she had guests that were being booked and they didn't turn out to be good guests, then her reputation would suffer and she would find it difficult to then get bookings for her clients. And to me, this showed that it wasn't just money that was motivating her, but it was also the quality of guests that she was looking to engage.
Absolutely. We take pains, Jim, in trying to make sure that what we've built up over the years, of course, we can sustain that reputation in the industry. And a lot of people, like you mentioned, are impressed with the fact that they get to speak with Annie, and Annie speaks with every single one of our clients to ensure that they align and we align with what they're looking to do. So I think that is a good representation of you as well, because you made it through the ringer, right? You made it through the ringer.
Certainly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Annie also. Now, you worked with the radio team, which, of course, I'm the radio director, and Jason's our award-winning producer, former award-winning producer for CBS Radio, who is our media trainer and also our news guy. He uses his producer's perspective to find great stories that would be of interest to top-level radio shows. And not only did you do one radio campaign with us, but you did two. So why don't you talk about your experience in working with the radio division?
Well, what I found impressive, too, Stacey, is that you're not, so to say, just thrown to the wolves, as it were, like you just set up the interviews and then the person is left on their own to try to learn by on-the-job training and failing, as it were. But you actually had mock interviews that were set up to train me so I know how to react to different situations and to also be prepared to speak with a radio host and how to go about doing that, and maybe some pointers, as it were, of getting prepared for those interviews. And Jason was exceptional at doing that for me. And as always, if I had any questions, your availability yourself personally was always impressive as too. In other words, I didn't just get a recording, as it were, and we'll be back to you, and then the person never gets back to you. You always answered the phone. You answered my questions right away, and if you didn't have the answer, you found them and you got back to me in a reasonable amount of time that I could be better prepared for these interviews.
And once you were on the interviews, you've done the interviews, and you had those experiences on the airwaves, how did you leverage the fact that you were on some of these major shows? I mean, I one in particular that I was very proud of, as we spoke about during the booking process, was the story out of North Carolina, WUNC University, Chapel Hill. We worked together with Dick Gordon, who has since retired, so we were able to get in on that before he left the program. But how were you able to leverage some of these really big brand names in the different other things that you were doing? I mean, you're a very busy man.
Well, it was really interesting is what I've done with these is I've posted these different podcasts on my website, jameshholzrichterconsultancy.com, and allowed people to be able to then see the type of person I would be if I was engaged, say, to come speak with them on ethics or whistleblowing or different things that I was involved in, or the education that I've had, or being able to help them develop programs of compliance for themselves. And since then, I have been now receiving multiple bookings now that has increased in the amount of speaking engagements that I'm doing, keynote addresses and presentations, as well as to be able to provide the book that I wrote, A Just Cause, to all in attendance as well at a reduced cost for those who are attending the conferences. And most of these are going to auditors, of forensic accountants, as well as the third annual fraud conference that's coming up this May as well. These people are finding me on the website due to these interviews that I've done, and even friends have told me when I call them, they say, we heard you on the radio and it was really interesting. We heard you on PBS, we've heard you on NPR, and so it's had an impact, a definite impact.
Well, that's fun, right? When you get that call and you say, hey, Jim, I heard you on the radio. That feels good, too, that you know that not only you're just doing the radio interviews, because, when you're on these interviews, you're basically on the phone, right, for the most part. I mean, I know that you had a couple of in-studio interviews, but you're basically on the phone and just talking to someone. So it's nice to get that feedback, unsolicited feedback, that people are hearing you, that you are making a difference.
Absolutely, Stacey. And as you said too, being on Mr. Gordon's one of his final shows that aired out of the story, that was a remarkable privilege. That he thought that what I had to say was of such importance that he wanted to book me as one of his final stories that he was doing. So I was rather impressed with that and pleased as well.
And now, Jim, listening to you talk, it sounds to me as if there were so many other deliverables from the radio campaign beyond book sales. A lot of clients come to us and, they're very, very focused on how many books they're going to sell from each individual interview. Can you talk just a bit about the power of the radio shows and the quality of the radio shows, and how not only, yes, you might sell some books from your time on the air, but the book sales come later down the road?
Well, absolutely. It's not so much that you're going to have such a large increase in sales through different media such as Amazon.com or CreateSpace or different things such as that, but what you get is you get the training that you need, as well as you also lend credibility to yourself and to what you're speaking about. And because of the people that you work with, it also lends credibility to your message, as it were. And also the training that you receive as well makes it easier for you to, when you are up there doing questions and answers that usually follow a lot of these addresses, that you're prepared for that, because it's similar to what the host is going to ask you. And in a couple of the cases of the interviews that I did, there were actually phone-in audiences who would call in or send in a question through Twitter or through Facebook while you're on the air, and that you would then answer these questions live, as it were. And so this gives you the ability to think on your feet and to become a better speaker, and in that sense you become more marketable when you have a message that you want to convey.
We love to demonstrate, because as I mentioned in the podcast, that people come to us and say, I want to sell 1 million books. And we just like to demonstrate to them that it's not always about the book sales, that you have these radio interviews and, the residual impact of the radio interviews, whether it's, your name is more on the internet, you're being linked to, the
Right.
search engines are picking you up
Right.
a little bit more because of all these things, or, as you said, the training, people get to hear you on your website so they know what they're getting if they want to hire you as a speaker. All of that is really important, and they're all deliverable. So it always goes way beyond book sales, and we just try to illustrate that so much.
Well, one of the things is that if you look for a dollar-for-dollar exchange, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not like you're going to have this huge, oh, my word, I heard about this, and you just sold 1 million books. It didn't happen, and it's not going to. What the thing it does, though, is that as I tell these people who ask me to come speak, I says, well, I tell you what, I will provide my books at a reduced rate rather than receive a speaker's fee, and you can then provide the publication to everyone in attendance. And that's how I'm getting paid, is they'll take 1,000 books, they'll take 500 books.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're paying, they take 1,000 books at $10 a book, that's $10,000 to go speak. Plus they pay you to come. To travel. So that's not a bad, and then plus you have 1,000 books that go out into people's hands, and then they start talking about it, and it can start a groundswell that way.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, it's very good. I'm so glad that we were able to help you with that and contribute to these things for you. And of course, you just kind of keep on keeping on, Jim. And what we'll do, again, if we're around anytime you need a little recharge.
Absolutely.
So we could do that for you. And I'll keep you in mind, of course, as we do, for anything that might come up. And we can always call you and see if you're interested in us pursuing for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with our listeners. Is there anything out there that you would like to promote or anything coming up?
Well, I do have a couple speaking engagements. I have one for the Association of Government Accountants that's going to be taking place in Chicago, and that's going to be on April 23rd and 24th at the Metcalf Federal Building in downtown Chicago. And I have another speaking engagement as well in Chicago for the 3rd Annual Fraud Conference on May 30th, and that's going to be held at the Northwest Metro Chicago chapter at the Sears Holding and corporate headquarters of Sears and Hoffman Estates.
And Jim, how could our listeners get a hold of you and learn a little bit more about your book, A Just Cause, or your consultancy?
Well, they can go to my website, JamesHHolzrichter Consultancy.com, and that's HOLZRICHTER, and that's all one word. And there it has a lot of information about A Just Cause, as well as the campaign that was provided to me through Annie Jennings. That's all there as well as some other interviews, too, that were outside of that. One was with Russian television, and the other on CNN.
Well, again, Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
And this podcast is presented by Annie Jennings of the national publicity firm Annie Jennings PR and the creator of Jennings Wire Online magazine. For more information on how you, too, can experience radio success, please visit AnnieJenningsPR.com.